Hello, welcome in. I'm super excited for this video, and if you're watching, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Today's topic is on boundaries, what they are, why you need them, and how to establish them. So the reason I thought of this topic was because I was actually just on a hike with my friend, and we were just talking about our past, things that we've been through, and we both discovered that we had bad anger issues as kids and as teenagers. And we were trying to figure out why that was, and then we eventually came to the conclusion that it was because we didn't know how to express our boundaries. And when your boundaries get crossed constantly, that is you disrespecting or not honoring your body, not honoring your spirit. And when that happens, then you start to build up a lot of resentment towards the people that are crossing your boundaries. But when you're not expressing your boundaries, they don't know that they're crossing them. And that is why it is so important to have boundaries. So yeah, that was one of the many reasons that we discovered was probably the cause of our anger issues. But not having boundaries can also lead to a bunch of other things that are unhealthy in your life, not only with your emotional state, but also with your bodily processes. And this is because when you're not honoring your boundaries, what boundaries are, first of all, protection for your emotions to be honored. And when you don't have boundaries, you're not honoring your emotions. And when this happens, when you are not honoring your emotions, most of the time, your body goes into fight or flight. And it becomes so ready to escape that it gets so stressed out because it thinks it is in a life-threatening situation. Because boundaries are not only emotional, but they're also physical. So if someone does something to make you uncomfortable physically or emotionally, your body is going to go into a fight or flight mode unless you are able to come back to a baseline state and express your boundaries. But now I want to talk about fight or flight because this is huge for boundaries and it's huge for just your well-being of life in general. Fight or flight mode is, first of all, is a little biohack in our genetics where back in the day, we used to be surrounded by life-threatening animals like bears and tigers and lions. We used to actually encounter these animals. And because of this, over time, we developed this fight or flight mode where it is just a surge of adrenaline to get you out of that life-threatening situation. Whether it is running, whether it's fighting, whatever it is, your fight or flight mode activates. I believe it's your sympathetic nervous system that activates, which gets you ready to fight. And it gets all of these bodily processes going, but it also shuts non-essential bodily processes down, such as digestion and such as ovulation. Because in that moment that you are in fight or flight, your body is focused on one thing, and that is surviving, that is running away from the bear or fighting the bear. That's what your body's focused on. It's not focused on the non-essentials like digesting food right now. It's not focused on ovulating and probably a bunch of other systems that get shut down because it's just focused on survival. And so now, I don't know about you, but I haven't encountered a bear a day in my life. So I assume that's the same for most of you, unless you live in a particular area. But I highly doubt any of you have encountered a tiger recently. So we don't experience those types of threats in today's world very often as we used to back in the day. But today, our fight or flight mode is being activated more than it should be. And this is because we are constantly stimulated with the outside world, with people, with friends. And it's things that set off our fight or flight that shouldn't normally set it off. And our fight or flight mode is getting set off too many times a day, too many times a week, that our bodies are being put in chronic stress. And if you know anything about stress, it is not good for you. It is the number one killer. And it can lead to cancer, it can lead to autoimmune diseases because your immune system is shutting down when you are in that fight or flight mode. all in all, fight or flight is not something that you should be in every single day, not even like many days a week, because you are not encountering actual life-threatening situations that many times a week. And most of the time, it is just your perception around that situation that makes you think it is life-threatening. And one of the situations in which we activate fight or flight mode is when our boundaries get crossed. So that is the importance of having boundaries, not only for your emotional well-being, but physically for your well-being, because over time, when you constantly activate fight or flight, you are activating stress. And stress is good, but it's not good to have every single day or 3 times a week even, especially if it's because you think you're in a life-threatening situation. A lot of people have this misconception that boundaries are something rigid and it's being mean to people when you express your boundaries, when no, that is completely the opposite of what boundaries are. Because boundaries are you honoring your emotions, and it's honoring those uncomfortable emotions, those sensations that make you feel like you're about to go into fight or flight mode, that make you feel uncomfortable. And rather, this is what a lot of people do, than shrink down when you feel your boundaries are being crossed. You want to speak up so that you can bring your body back to a state of tranquility, and also it can help to express yourself vulnerably with people, with friends, with bosses, coworkers, family. And it deepens the relationship that you have with them because you are getting to a more vulnerable side of yourself. And I know a lot of people, myself included, I used to shrink down when I felt my boundaries were being crossed because I did not think that they would be received in the right way. And even when I did speak up about my boundaries, sometimes when I was being brought up by my parents, my boundaries were not honored. And so over time, that made me very afraid to even speak up about my boundaries, to even speak in general. I had to go to speech therapy for a while. But speaking up about your boundaries is crucial for having those intimate relationships with people, and also for having that intimate relationship with yourself, so that you can trust yourself, so that your body and your spirit know that it can trust you to take care of it and to make it feel safe. Because that is your role as a human being. It's to make yourself feel safe so that you can thrive, not that your spirit should feel like it can't trust you when you shrink down. Another thing about boundaries is some people don't express them because they think that their boundaries should just be known, that what they're being annoyed by is something obvious that everyone should have common sense to do. One example of this was I used to get really irritated when I was living with one of my college roommates that they wouldn't clean up after themselves, until I had a discussion with her about it, and we had like a really intimate conversation, and it was actually kind of beautiful how she was able to open up to me about like why that was, and how I was able to open up to her about why that bothered me, that she wasn't cleaning up after herself. And honestly, my other roommates at the time, there were 6 of us, a lot of them were just complaining about the situation and not really talking to that one roommate about it. And so this is a prime example of how you are not honoring your boundaries, and how also you are expecting another person to just assume your boundaries off the bat. People are not raised the same way at all. Like, someone could be raised completely different than another person. And if another person is not raised to clean up after themselves the same way that you are, then that's going to be a clash that you have to be able to talk to them about so that you can get closer, and also so that you can resolve the issue or resolve your feelings, whatever is irritating you. But something that seems obvious to you as a boundary might be something completely foreign to another person that they never learned, they were never taught the importance of having that boundary. So you can't just assume that people know your boundary right off the bat, because they might not even know how they're making you feel. They are most likely not doing it out of malevolence, but just pure ignorance, that they don't know how you feel. And that is your obligation as to yourself and to that other person, so that you don't build resentment against them. That is your obligation to speak up about whatever they're doing it is that is bothering you. Okay. Now we are going to talk about the analogy that I have. Just sip my kombucha. I was on antibiotics for about, I think, a week because I had strep throat, and they made me so tired, these antibiotics. Like, I remember them doing the same exact thing when I had strep last year. I don't know why I keep getting strep. My voice is under attack. But anyways, I'm feeling better, and I'm drinking my pro and my prebiotics. I'm taking supplements so that my gut is restored, and my vagine floor, she's all healthy and good. So we love that. But anyways, let's get to this analogy. First, I'm gonna lower this a bit. But the analogy that I have, some of you might think it's gross, but it is the most straightforward thing that I can think of, and it does make a lot of sense, and that is going to the bathroom. So when you're going to the bathroom, when you have that urgency to go, whether it's number 1 or number 2, you go. You don't, I hope you aren't holding it in until it feels so uncomfortable that you're running to the bathroom at full speed and like pushing people out of the way to go to the bathroom. Like, no, if you have the urgency, most of the time you're gonna go right when you have it, or the second time at least. But I want you to think of this as an analogy for releasing your emotions when someone makes you feel uncomfortable, or when someone hurts your feelings or disrespects you. You want to let those emotions out that you're feeling when that happens. And that is very similar to releasing your urine or your feces in the bathroom. And it's because it's a release of emotion. And when you don't honor your boundaries is when you shrink down and when you hold in that emotion. And emotion is energy in motion. And what we know from holding an emotion is that it creates stagnation in your body, and it will create a lot of blockages, and it can even lead to you feeling physically, like I was using with the fight or flight example, physically drained. So just like you would go to the bathroom if you have an urgency to go, when you have an urgency to voice something that bothers you, voice it. Like, don't hold it in. Like, if you were going to the bathroom and you had to go really bad, are you just gonna let it like hurt your stomach so badly? No, you're not. But yeah, I'm most of the time when we are, this is gonna be a really gross analogy, but think of a time where you did not honor your boundary, and over time it kept on getting crossed because you're not speaking up about it, that it bothers you. That feeling is not going to go away, sweetie. It might go away temporarily, but each time it gets poked, you're going to feel it, and you're going to feel it more, because this is your spirit, this is your body telling you, hey, this makes me uncomfortable, stop. Whatever that person's doing, speak up for me. That's your body begging you to speak up. And if you don't, and you wait until you explode, you're going to lose your, you know what, your number 2 on that person, because you're building up so much resentment towards them that it's just going to be it's going to be too much emotion, too much energy for you to handle at once, that it's just going to explode. You're just going to let it out all at once and flip out on the person. And likewise, when you use the bathroom, if you keep on holding it in, sweetie, I can't imagine that would be good for the toilet. Like, you're gonna explode on it. So just think of that analogy the next time when you really are feeling some type of way because of what another person is doing or saying to you. Okay? Because if you are so concerned with the other person and what they're thinking and what they're feeling, how you're going to make them feel by speaking up, then you are placing their emotional safety over your own. And you don't even know if they're having those emotions that you're thinking about. It's all in your imagination. So instead of, and that's not living in the present, by the way, because you are living in a future reality in which you are hurting their feelings. So instead of doing that, come back to the present, come back to how it is that you are feeling because of their actions or because of their words, and voice that. Stay in the present moment. That is very important. All right. So that was the first half of this video, which was what emotional boundaries are, physical boundaries, why they're important. But now we are going to get into the second half, which is how to establish boundaries and stick up for yourself. Alrighty, now we're getting into how to actually instill these boundaries into your life. And this can be for your friends, for your relationship, family, work, literally anything. Maybe it's a boundary that you want to have with yourself. But first things first on setting boundaries is you need to be able to tap into that uncomfortable feeling that you have when a boundary is crossed. So I'm going to use an example of someone making a rude remark at you, whether it's a friend or it's a coworker at work, and you feel disrespected by that remark. What I want you to do is I want you to feel that feeling. Don't ignore it, don't shrink by it, don't get scared of it. Tap into it. Tap into that feeling. And instead of abandoning it, I want you to speak up, whether it's something like, what did you mean by that? Or if it is something more along the lines of pulling them to the side later on and saying, hey, what you said just hurt my feelings. I want to know why you said that. Those two are kind of the same vibe, but you get the gist. Like, I just want you to say something rather than say nothing. Because if you say or you're doing nothing in that moment, that is you not honoring your boundaries. And I actually did write down another example. Okay, so let's say you're at work and you are being, or no, not work. Let's say you are in a relationship and you're having an argument with your partner. What started out as a civil conversation has now grown into an argument. If it gets too much for you and things are not getting anywhere in that conversation and it's just you two arguing, what I want you to say is something along the lines of, I feel blank right now. Is it okay? But this is important to me. Can we talk about this when my head is clear? I'm feeling stressed out right now. I need time to think, but I want to talk about this. Can we just do it later when I'm feeling more calm? It's very important when you're expressing boundaries to use the emotions that you're feeling and to talk about them. It doesn't have to be a whole spiel, but when you're just talking about your emotions, it could literally be a one-sentence statement. I feel stressed. I feel sad. I feel angry. And then you want to talk about a way in which you can resume whatever it is that you're doing with this person, if it's important. But when you are in the desired emotional state, so like in the example that I just gave, the desired emotional state is calmness or thinking clearly. And you're emphasizing that this is important to you, this topic that you guys are talking about is important to you, but you can't talk about it right now because either you're being overwhelmed or you're feeling stressed by it, whatever, maybe it's not getting anywhere. That's what I want you to do in relationships. But in coworker examples or where they're disrespecting you, or maybe a friend is disrespecting you, you can take more of a sticking up for yourself approach, because that person might also be doing it to make a jab at you to see how much you are willing to take from them. And sweetie, we don't take shit from anyone, okay? So yeah, stick up for yourself. And why I love boundaries is because it also just gives you so much confidence. One, because you're sticking up for yourself, like in that example where if someone disrespects you, you're able to stick up for yourself and voice, like, what makes you think you could talk to me like that? You must be delusional. But also because it gives you confidence from an almost like spiritual and bodily sensation point, where your body and your spirit are just trusting you so much that they don't even have to think about if you're going to abandon them or not, because that's completely out of the question. And establishing boundaries can be very, very difficult if you are new to it, if you did not grow up with strong boundaries, or if your parents tested your boundaries a lot when you were younger. I know that was the case with me, and it was actually very hard to start using my words. But one of the positive things that did come out of college was I had to live with roommates, and I had to be able to express my boundaries, like things they did that bothered me. And the plus side also with boundaries is you can reflect on that moment, why it made you feel that way, how it made you feel later on when you get home and you're alone in your journal, or maybe just meditating on it and thinking about why it made you so upset. Because that is also a trigger whenever someone crosses a boundary. And it's important to evaluate our triggers to learn about ourselves. Where did that trigger come from? Why does that comment make us upset? How did our civil conversation turn into an argument over time? What was I thinking about in the moment? And how could I have handled that better when a similar experience like that came along in my life in the past? Because anything that triggers you right now is most likely something related to a negative experience that you had in the past that you didn't know how to handle or how to confront. But now that you're older, or maybe you're young, but now that you have watched this video, you know the importance of boundaries. It's not only good for you, but it's good for the people that you're surrounding yourself with. And it's good because it creates a relationship with you, and it also teaches you that you can trust yourself. So rather than building up resentment for people when they're crossing your boundaries, I want you to just tap into that emotion, that uncomfortable sensation that you are feeling, and voice it. The longer you wait, the less likely you are to voice yourself, is what I will say. So when you feel that uncomfortable emotion, tap into that sensation, yes, but voice it like that. Don't wait on it. Don't think about what the other person's gonna say. You need to act, okay? Because that also goes along with thinking ahead rather than thinking in the present. Being in the present. You just freaking do it, and then you're like, oh my gosh, where did that come from? And then eventually you are going to be able to be setting boundaries like that, like cash flow, okay? So I really hope this video helped, because boundaries are super, super, super important for your physical and for your emotional health, and just for your overall confidence and self-worth. But if you like this content, my name is Simone, and I talk all things femininity. I talk things like this, like setting boundaries, doing inner work, and it's all to help you become the best version of yourself, really, and to be a loving version of yourself and an accepting one too. So I hope to see any of you in the next video, but if not, take care, God bless, and have a lovely day.